Hi everyone, and welcome to the third session of my Revisiting Beyond Asanas series of sessions. As you may know, it's June, and June also happens to be the month where we have Yoga Day, and my book was actually published on the Yoga Day 2019. So I thought this year I'm just going to go back to my book Beyond Asanas. It's available on Amazon for anyone who's interested. And I thought I'd revisit this book chapter by chapter. And I've done the first two chapters already. And today we're going to look at the third chapter. Now the third chapter of the book is called Balasana. And Balasana also means child's pose, and many of you know that I've recently delivered a baby girl, and so now this chapter and this posture actually means so much more to me. It's become a little more special to me. The meaning of this posture has become a lot more special to me ever since I've had Kalindi. And in Indian mythology and in Indian culture, generally, mothers and children, they hold a special place. So even when I was pregnant, anytime I would go out, there would be like a sense of, specialness that, that people would look at you with. And there's a certain regard for mothers and children in Indian mythology. And if you look at Indian art, it's full of like mother and child depictions, and so it's of course then it's natural that even yoga would have an asana commemorating this special bond. And the most famous mother-child bond in Indian mythology, arguably the most famous, is the bond that Krishna had with his mother Yashoda. And I remember that a month before I had Kalindi, before I delivered, I had gone to Guruvayur. Guruvayur is a small temple town in Kerala, and I was there to attend a Mohiniyattam performance by my teacher. And the performance was supposed to be in the temple known as the Guruvayur temple. It's the most famous temple there. It's probably the largest temple there. And it's known, Guruvayur is known because of that temple. And I was there because I thought that I would get a chance to watch my teacher perform, and I could also, take a look at this temple. Now, later on, we found out that this temple is actually dedicated to baby Krishna. So it's not even a Krishna temple. It's a temple specifically for baby Krishna. And it's considered very auspicious for people, to take their children there, to take their, babies there. And a lot of people who want to have children, they go there just to ask for that, ask for the blessings of God. And I don't know whether it was just a coincidence, whether it was ironic, or whether that place actually has some kind of powers. But, I'd been trying to conceive for a long time. And, as soon as I went to that temple, just the next month, I found out that I was pregnant. So I leave you to decide, what you think of that. But it's, the fact that, the mother-child relationship is considered so special in Indian mythology is something that you can find depicted in art and in certain practices, and definitely in our mythology. So now getting back to Beyond Asanas, I have written about two stories related to Balasana in this book. And the first story is actually about Krishna. Again, this might be just a coincidence, or it's maybe ironic. And this story is called No Ordinary Child. And I've written about how, baby Krishna was out playing with his friends one day, and everybody was in the forest and they were plucking fruit. The older kids were plucking fruit from the trees, and Krishna was small and he was unable to reach. And he tried to tell his friends and his brothers, can you please give me a fruit too? But because he was so small, nobody listened to him, or they just ignored him or something. And so he started to eat sand. And then when the news got to Yashoda that, Krishna has once again been naughty and he's eaten sand, Yashoda decided to take his case when he came back home. And that's what she did. She asked Krishna, did you eat sand? And he kept denying it. And then she said, okay, then you open your mouth and you show me. And as soon as Krishna opens his mouth, Yashoda looks into his mouth and he sees the entire universe in his mouth. And I'll leave you to imagine that. I'm sure on YouTube there are lots of videos about this incident. It's a very famous story in Indian mythology. And the significance, I've also written about the significance of these stories, particularly to yoga. And in yoga philosophy and in yoga circles, we always say that, children are the best yogis. So if you look at a child never thinks about the future. He never thinks about the past. The children remain in the present moment and they live each moment to the fullest. And, their reactions are not colored by something that's happened in the past. They always live consciously. They're living in the present moment. And they're so untouched by the world and worldly ways. So, I can actually see this every time I interact with Kalindi. I can see how, it's always about the present moment, about what's happened right now. There's nothing, even yesterday doesn't make a difference. She's not thinking about tomorrow. So there's a huge lesson for us, from that, how children can actually teach you about yoga, about being conscious, about living with more consciousness. So that's the first story. Basically depicting how Yashoda actually could see the kind of embodied in children. The second story that I talk about in the Balasana chapter, in chapter 3 of the book, is called An Honorable Student. And this story is about one of the most famous gurus. And if you are into yoga, you would know who that is. One of the most famous gurus is, he's called Dronacharya. And in fact, he's so famous, he had this ashram, it said, he had this huge ashram where the Pandavas actually lived and studied with him until they reached adulthood. And that ashram today is called Gurugram or Gurgaon. So he's really famous. We've honored him in that way. We've named an entire city after him. And so Dronacharya, arguably his best student, was a guy called Eklavya. Now, Eklavya was a guy who had seen Dronacharya teaching the Pandavas, and he was not of the princely strata. The Pandavas were all princes. And one day Eklavya saw Dronacharya actually teaching these guys, hunting, swordsmanship, and how to shoot a bow and arrow. And he really wanted to learn from him. And he goes to him and says, okay, will you teach me? Will you be my guru? And Dronacharya says, well, I can't be your guru because I teach the princes and it's not allowed. I can only teach the princely class. I cannot teach anybody else. So Eklavya says, okay, fine, he has to accept that. But what he does is he, in secret, he observes how Dronacharya teaches his students. And just by observing him, he becomes one of the best swordsmen around. And he learns how to shoot the bow and arrow also really well. So he becomes a great warrior, you can say. And one day the story goes that all the Pandavas are in the forest and they have a dog. And again, I've mentioned it before. I mentioned it in the first live that I did, that dogs are also very symbolic in Indian mythology. And downward dog pose, you can go back and you can look at that live session that I did. There's a significance, that all dogs have in Indian mythology. So here their dog is, playful and he's frolicking in front of them. And he's making a lot of noise. And all the Pandavas try to make him stop barking, but he doesn't. So then all of a sudden they notice that, okay, he stopped barking, and they notice that his snout, is there are a bunch of arrows circling his snout, and an arrow that keeps all those other arrows together. And they're all wondering, like, who's done this? The dog was not harmed, and it takes an incredible amount of skill to be able to shoot arrows in that way. And they're like, okay, only Dronacharya could have taught something like that. And so they go to him and they're like, okay, who is the student? Who else are you teaching? And they discover Eklavya. And, Arjun gets really angry and says, well, you're only supposed to teach us. We're supposed to be the best swordsmen in the kingdom, the best, the bow and arrow, fighters in the kingdom. So how could you teach somebody else? And Dronacharya says, well, I haven't taught him. He's just observed and, learned from me. And and he Dronacharya is like in this weird position. And so Dronacharya makes this very important decision then. So he asks Eklavya, he says, okay, if you consider me my guru, where is my guru dakshina? And Eklavya says, yes, I'll give you whatever you want, because ultimately you're the one I've learned from. And Dronacharya says, well, okay, what I want is your thumb. I want your thumb. And he, the reason he asked for the thumb is because without a thumb, you cannot shoot a bow and arrow, So even if Eklavya was the most talented bow and arrow, warrior, it would ultimately, once he couldn't use the bow and arrow anymore, Arjuna would become the best warrior in the kingdom. So Dronacharya had a reason for why he asked for his thumb. And over the years, many people have asked me whether Dronacharya is we consider him to be an example of a good teacher. Was he? Was he a good guru? Was it right for Eklavya to just agree to do this? And what does it say about Arjuna, that he was so jealous, that he asked Dronacharya to do something like this? He didn't intervene and say, like, no, it's okay. Let's let him go. It's okay. So who was right? Who was wrong? Was Drona the greatest teacher of all? Was Arjuna the best warrior? All of this is something that the book encourages you to think about. So these are the two stories in my book Beyond Asanas. And to end this live, I want to read out the symbolism and significance that I've spoken about related to this asana. So the first one is it's necessary to go inwards rather than outwards, and yoga is a means to do that. So this goes along with the story about Krishna having the universe in his mouth. The universe actually exists within us, So if you want something, if you want the whole world also, it's not outside. It actually resides within you. So that's the symbolism that we have in the first story. And then in the second story, we have, and this is what I've written from the book, yoga is also a guru-shishya parampara, and in such a relationship, we sometimes experience disappointment. The important thing is to continue learning and not lose faith in the guru. And this is relevant to a lot of modern day yogis because, sometimes we are so obsessed with finding the right guru that we keep guru hopping. Or shopping from guru shopping also, like just window shopping for the best guru. But we have to think about how much are we giving to the practice, and are we just looking, for a crutch, or are we actually looking to learn from somebody? Because Eklavya learned from Drona, even though Drona refused him as a student. And finally, from the book again, everyone encounters roadblocks and setbacks, but those who move forward with courage get closer to their goals than those who lose hope. The path of yoga keeps us moving forward with vigor and strength. So this is, about Balasana, the symbolism of Balasana. This is why we should continue to practice with dedication, and ups and downs with regards to teachers keep happening. But ultimately, we have to remember that the practice is something for us. Nobody else can really give us the practice. They can support us on our path. And whatever, it's a very popular thing. I see it on Instagram a lot, where people say, the whole world, you'll find the whole world if you go looking for it. And what these stories are showing us is that the world actually exists inside of you. You don't have to go out looking for it. The whole world is within. Whatever you're searching for is within. So that is the symbolism and significance of Balasana, which is the child's pose. I hope you enjoyed this live. I'm going to be doing chapter 4 of my book Beyond Asanas in my next live also. Go and buy this book. It's a wonderful book. It's still relevant. It was published in 2019 and it's still relevant. I still look at a lot of the stories. A lot of people still write to me about the stories, and there's so much food for thought for everybody and not just yoga students. So that's about it for me for today. Thank you for logging in. Thank you for watching this, and I will see you again for chapter 4. Bye.